Det här är Anna Åbergs podcast. Jag började leva som digital nomad 2012. Sökte den yttre friheten i att resa runt världen och jobba online och vara fri. Och den yttre friheten ledde till en inre resa och en inre frihet som jag utforskar i mirakelkursen. Och den här podcasten handlar om en kurs i mirakler. I det här avsnittet så pratar jag med Cyndi Krupp som jobbar tillsammans med Lisa Anatoli och Bill Free i Teacher of God Foundation. Och jag och Cyndi pratar om bland annat det här med att genomgå förändring och hur relationer till ens barn och ens föräldrar förändras. Anna Åberg, grundare till Extended Freedom Academy, och idag så är jag här med Cyndi som pratar engelska. Så jag går över till att prata engelska. Welcome Cyndi.
I am so happy to be here.
And I'm so happy to have you here. And you're working for the Teacher of God Foundation, right?
I am. You know,
Yeah.
Lisa Natoli's 40-day program lit me up from the inside out, and I haven't looked back.
Since then, yeah, I so admire your work. I want to say that first. And tell me, how did the course find you? When did it happen and how?
Well, I think it was Jesus that found me and then brought me to the course. So I want to start it that way, because it was way back in 1999, the year 2000, that time period. I had two babies. You know, they were born in 97 and 98. I had a mortgage. I had a husband that didn't really like me. You know, it was not a good marriage. I had a job I didn't like, and I had severe panic disorder. Severe panic disorder. And I was going from doctor to doctor and psychologist to psychologist, and everybody just wanted to medicate me. And I was very grateful. And I'll say one of the greatest gifts that I was ever given was this fear of drugs. I grew up in an addictive home. I had a lot of, relationships with people with addictions. And I had this major fear that if I started taking these drugs to control the anxiety, it felt like a life sentence, both for me and for my two girls. And I came home one day from one of these appointments with a psychiatrist, I think, who gave me a sample pack of Zoloft on the little blue pills. And I came home and I locked myself in the bathroom and I dropped to my knees. And I had never really believed in God. Wasn't raised in a highly spiritual, God-filled family, didn't have a relationship. But in that moment, I dropped to my knees and I literally just said, God, if you're real, I need your help now because I'm dying. And I really felt like I was dying, and I felt like I couldn't be a good mother. And it was so intense, and I was so scared to take those pills, and I let go in that moment. And Lisa talks, if you listen to her, she talks about the day she handed her life over and said, I'll work only for you. It wasn't like that, but there was a peace that kind of came over me. And I ended up getting up and I never took a pill. I put that sample pack on the top shelf, and years later, I flushed them all down the toilet or something. I got rid of them in some sort of ceremony. But after that, my life just started to change. And I just sort of followed, I call them now the lighted breadcrumbs. And I ended up being sent to someone who did body work, and I found out the emotions were connected to the body. And from there, I went searching for meditation, and I found a woman who was getting ordained as a spiritualist minister. And for 3 years, I studied and I talked to dead people, and I did energy healing, and I laid on hands, and my life was getting and I lost my job as an engineer, and the panic dissolved, but not the anxiety. I don't know how to put it any other way. And somewhere along that path, lots of things happened, lots more than you could describe in a few minutes. I ended up buying a copy of A Course in Miracles from a library bookstore for like $1. And I brought it home, the blue book. I still have that book because every time I moved or I got rid of books or whatever, I never got rid of that book. A lot of people tell that story. And I opened it more than once, and I said, oh, of course this is an illusion. I'm doing energy healing. Of course, and I could walk into any Course in Miracles like study group or whatever and talk like I knew what I was talking about. It's one of we all have our geniuses, and teaching is one of mine, even when you're making it up. I don't know. So I always felt comfortable, but I didn't do the work. But I carried the book with me, and lots of things happened. The divorce happened. Lots of illnesses came and went. I had a website. I had a list of 100,000 people. A lot of amazing things happened in my life that I can't describe. And at the end of 2017, I wrote to my list. I had a mailing list of about 20,000 people, and I wrote to them and I said, I am going to make 2018 the year of the miracle. I didn't know what that meant, but first thing that happened after I wrote that is I found the blue book, and I just opened it up. And within a couple of days, somebody emailed me and said, well, if you're going to make 2018 the year of the miracle, you have to do Lisa Natoli's 40-day. It's free. And something lit up. And I had already known to follow things that light up. So I Googled her. I signed up for the 40-day program. I felt the transformation immediately. I was knee-deep in doing the 40-day program, doing the workbook lessons, really for the first time, reading the text. I did all of that in 2018. Read through the text, did the workbook lessons. I went right from the 40-day into the Teachers of God Living in Purpose Mastery program. I started teaching in the Living in Purpose Mastery. Like I started that in March. By August, I started teaching in the monthly calls. The following February, I think, Bill reached out to me and offered me a job. I didn't, I wrote it in my vision plan that it would be amazing to work for them. But I didn't pursue it. I didn't tell them I wanted a job. I told Jesus I wanted the job. And I really, because things are changing all the time. There's one thing to study A Course in Miracles. I don't study the Course in Miracles anymore. In 2020, I dedicated the year to living as if everything that I'm teaching, everything that I'm learning, everything that I'm studying, both in the Course and the other teachings that come to me, as if it was real. So even though my eyes see different things, even though the world is showing me different things, even though intense emotions often arise from this body-mind, I still sit in it and act as if and demand that the teachings are real. And I like that word. Like, I will stand in what feels like the middle of a hurricane, doing it this week, of emotions and intense energies, and just, nope, this is what Jesus promises me, so this is real. I am not to use even the body's, I'm not to use the body's definition of what's going on or the eyes, but to live as if everything I'm studying is real. And the more I do that, the more I'm just watching the world just drop away, and this joy and peace and love and connection just take its place.
Wow. It sounds so amazing to live that way. How is it, I was thinking, when you talk about having panic attacks and anxiety and how you live now, if you compare those two lifestyles?
Well, every once in a while, I look back and I can tell you the stories
Mm.
of what the life was like, but I don't live in, it's almost, the teachings in the Course are true. I'm going to put it that way. And a big part of that means that as we shed the illusions, everything changes. Not just our present, not just our future, but our past. So the being that lived then doesn't exist anymore. So I can tell you what happened. I can introduce you to people who knew me then. But I also noticed that the stories are changing a little bit,
Yeah.
because the past doesn't exist except in our mind, right? The past doesn't exist except in our thoughts and our belief structure. So as our thoughts and our belief structure shift and change, the only part of my past that remains is, well, there's two parts of my past really that remain. One are the memories of the stories that I can use to help hold other people in love, and enough of it so, I ask Jesus all the time, my vision is to be compassion. The way that's defined is to be the Father's love reflected into the dream. And so I remember what it's like to live in an anxiety that feels all-encompassing, and to call to God but not feel God. And yet to know that as long as I'm calling, like I know now that it was the call. Lisa talks about it all the time, right? You just need to be willing. You really can't do it. If we're trying to control the experience or figure out how to work, we're really just getting in the way.
Yeah.
So I have that memory of that, and I can hold people that are living there in compassion, but I can't really touch it anymore. So that's one of the reasons why the story still exists. And the other is that there are still, quote unquote, dark lessons in this Cyndi body mind to be healed. I'm still in a physical body, so there are still some root belief structures around unworthiness or betrayal or abandonment or whatever they are that are moving through this beautiful vessel to be healed. And so when they come up to be healed, they often bring memories that maybe I stuffed instead of processed yet to come up to be healed. Other than that, the past doesn't really, it doesn't hold much interest to me.
This is a really interesting conversation, because I have started to feel it feels confusing with the past. I can relate to that it's changing, and I feel confused because I don't relate to the past as I used to.
That's a very good thing.
Yeah, and I feel a little bit nauseous, like I want to throw up because it's
I have experiences where I literally have to stop.
Exactly.
And this is really now, and go lay down. And the key is to not try to control it. So I don't get the nausea, because I acknowledge that what's happening is the world is changing through me.
Yeah.
So I lay down and pretend it's an amusement park ride and just allow things to spin without, the Course, Jesus teaches us, we need do nothing, ... but not interfere. You and I have both asked for the awakening, so the awakening is happening.
Yeah.
When the nausea hits, when the confusion hits, when the pain hits, it really just is an indication of those blocks to love's presence. And when we step back and say thank you, I was writing about it in my contemplation this morning. When the pain hits now, I don't try to fix it. I literally just say thank you, because it's just the next layer that gets to be healed. And when I get out of the way and rest in God's presence, I can watch the healing. And
Yeah.
sometimes the body, because literally those blocks are, the physical form
Yeah.
in the dream is real, right? And it's holding these memories. And so when they come up, and we don't try to fix the body, we don't look for the physical cause of the illness when they come up, but instead acknowledge that this is the potential for another layer to be released, not for us, but for the world. And we could just really sit and look at it as an amusement ride almost, and let the bed spin or the world tilt. X number of months ago, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, I literally had this vertigo that lasted about 2 weeks. I wouldn't drive the car.
Exactly.
It would be like this.
Yeah.
And the key was I just didn't drive the car.
Yeah.
But I could still be with Jesus. I was still able to do the Zoom calls. It only came up when I was teaching, when there was a reason for it. And I decided to I just enjoyed the ride. I didn't suffer through it because I knew it was just the body. It was just, the Holy Spirit taking me to the next step. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I still have a little bit of fear around it. I'm at the same time as I get a little bit afraid, I understand that it's the next level. but then it feels like, oh shit. And I don't like it. I don't like amusement parks.
Well, let's see if this reframe can help you and anyone else going through this.
I think it can.
Okay. So who you are in truth is love.
Yeah.
Right? Who you are in truth is love. You're a big fan of Lisa in the 40 Days, so you know that love and fear can never sit in the same place. Okay? So who you are can never be afraid. The Anna Dream character has an ego, and the ego can be afraid. Yeah. So one of the things that just happened for me in the last couple of weeks is I talked to Jesus and said, okay, I get it. I'm not going to be afraid of fear anymore. Yeah. So I'm not going to try to fix the fear. And when the fear comes up, I smile at it and say, thank you. And even though it still feels like Cyndi sometimes, I know it's not me. And so instead of looking at the fear and calling it bad, instead of looking at the fear and saying, oh, that means that I'm not in the circle of love and I'm not doing it right, I look at it and smile at it, acknowledge that it's coming up so that more of the ego thought system can be healed. So I celebrate that, acknowledge I'm not it, and I just watch. It doesn't, even when it hangs, it doesn't affect it can't affect who you are. And the more you acknowledge that it's not affecting who you are, the more it just doesn't affect your experience either. Right. And I can tell from the smile that you're getting it.
Yeah, I'm totally getting it. And I'm also seeing the roller coaster, and I'm actually seeing the roller coaster. I'm not on it. I'm observing it. And I get nauseous from observing it as well, but I'm not on it. And it also explains, because it feels like dying, and the ego is dying, and it totally feels like dying. And I think what I get most scared of is that I will change so much that my children won't be with me. And that had never happened. I mean, I've done a lot of changes and it doesn't happen, but that comes in my mind when I feel the nausea and get afraid and think I am the ego, and then I have to step back, and then I am observing.
So a few more reframes, because I don't know how old your children are, but mine are now 22 and 23, and I specifically made the request a couple of months ago to release my girls, because I acknowledge that Jesus and the light can take better care of them than my ego can. My ego didn't like it. This was a process, And the process really exists every time I felt the fear thought come up, every time I looked at one of the girls and decided that the current world circumstance was suffering, causing them suffering, I recognized that my ego, in its attempt to preserve itself, took the guilt and the fear that Cyndi won't tolerate in her own life anymore and hid it in them. You know, that's another part of the course teaching, right? Is that that's an ego preservation technique to take the guilt that, you know, when we're doing the work and project it into the world. So I started to really see how part of my ego's preservation was to project and hide the guilt. So I don't believe I'm a body. I'm not a body. I'm free. But Sarah and Emma, their bodies, and they need to be protected, and their life is suffering, and can they get to school, and how are they going to pay their loans? And this one had to fight with the boyfriend, and this one has an anxiety issue. Oh my God, and I'm sitting there and I start to laugh. Because, and so now every time I don't catch it all the time, but every time I notice it, I stop whatever I'm doing as soon as I can, and I go to my seat and I sit down, and I literally say, Holy Spirit, happen again. I got caught.
Yeah.
I can't heal this, but you can. And I breathe and I watch the thought dissolve.
Yeah. And the key to ask for help. Yeah. And what I hear you saying is also, my parents aren't my real parents. God is my parents. And it's the same with my children. I'm not their parent. And that's what I heard when I listened to you, to really know that we are equals. We are all children.
In what reality can I take better care of them than Jesus can? Or holiness, or God, or whatever awareness, infinite universe. In what reality am I safe and I'm well, but they're not? I mean, that's an ego lie. And that's the only other thing from what you were saying that I just, it's so helpful to say these things out loud.
Yeah.
The ego is an illusion, right? So we talk about this ego death, and we talk about the fear and the pain of it. But the ego is nothing other than an idea.
Yeah.
It's not who you are. It's not who you ever were. And so it can't die because it was never born.
Right. Yeah.
So when we also sit and watch that, because I was listening to you talk about the nausea, talk about the fear of death, talk about who's going to take care of my children, and will they even love me anymore? And I got to tell you, the more I let go of all these things, the better the relationship I have, not only with them, but the bigger miracle, if we had time for it, or we could talk about it more, is what's happening with the relationship with my mother, which is blowing me away when I look at her and I'm able to honestly, in my head, go, I know my mother's not my God. And that's part of what the healing was. For decades, even though I didn't know this, I was treating my mother as if she was my God, and she was this insane egoic God. How do you can never please an ego God. And when I was able to look at her and say, everything I do now, I do for God and for the love of God, and because of that, I love you more than I've ever loved you before. And even though she doesn't even believe in God, our relationship was healed in that moment. I realized that as a mother, that sort of relationship exists in the other direction, where there's an egoic belief that I am their God, that their happiness depends on what I'm doing for them or who I am. And that's not true.
No, that is not true. And I had the same experience, that when I penetrate the fear and I am on the other side, when I am love, the relationships, all of them are better. Yeah, I just forget it when I am leveling in this
I'm
game.
gonna, right. So I'm gonna correct you again because that's where I am.
Yes.
Who you are never forgets.
Mm.
Who you are is always love.
Right.
Who you are is always joy. Who you are in truth is always peace. There is a story that arises.
Mm.
So who you are also never forgets. You're just moving in and out of the character.
Right.
But when you're in the character may forget.
Yeah.
But you don't.
Right. It's
And when
always
you even,
there. Who I
right,
am, the true me, is
right.
always there, and have always been, and will always
And
be.
yeah. So when you, even before you have the experience of that,
Right.
if you take on the script, if you begin to speak the words, more and more you will see it as the truth.
Mm. I can feel the peace immediately when you say that. Immediately, yeah. So let's end with an advice for people who have just found A Course in Miracles. What would your advice be? How to start doing the lessons, or read the text, or whatever? How to manage?
Well, it's so interesting because I sit and I'm so grateful that you said you felt the peace.
Yeah.
Because I hand all conversations over, and we didn't do that formally. I usually do it formally. So it's not me, it's the Holy Spirit that is in all of us, that extends out and creates the peace. That's number one. Number two, I'm very inspired to say that if the Course is calling you, and if you're listening to this, chances are the Course is calling you. There are other ways to awaken. The first thing I would do is just take that breath and simply ask yourself, what is it do you want? What is it do you want? Do you want the world that you've been living in that has problems to solve, that is filled with fear and anxiety? Do you want this world where people are born and then they get sick and they grow old and they die? Do you want a world where all you see is chaos? Or are you ready to know the truth? The truth that regardless of whether or not you believe it or not, you are love, you are joy. God has never left us, never will. What we are is an extension of love, which is God. And as that, when we all choose to be that and extend together, that's my prayer, that anyone who hears my voice is touched and activated into the truth. If you're willing to take your place to extend the love and join the love and awaken this world from a dream of chaos into peace, you don't have to do anything but choose, purchase a copy of the Course, open it, and begin. Lisa always just says, buy the Course, open it, read, do what it says. The less you think about it, the less you try to understand it, the better. Just do it.
Beautiful.
I love you, Anna.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.